You know what? So very good. I see I have a co-host in who is also going to be letting people in, so that gives me time to go to the bio. So Her Royal Majesty Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir, the first of the Royal Palace of the African Diaspora, has been an eminent figure since her enthronement in 2022 and even before that, but definitely as Queen Mother of the African Diaspora, Benin Republic, with a mission to spotlight African spirituality and guide first-time visitors to the West African country. She has become a leading proponent for the Benin Republic. Her dedication to enabling greater understanding of dual citizenship and addressing the challenges of transnationalism are among her foremost mandates. In terms of early life and background, Dr. Dowoti Desir was born in Haiti, making history as the first Asian to ascend to the throne of Queen Mother on the African continent. Her traditional title, Pojito, meaning she who birthed the leopard, establishes her as the foundation of the Royal Palace of the African Diaspora. The ambassador at large of the High Council of Kings of Benin, she is also the founder and commander-in-chief of the Imperial Corps of Agodje of the African Diaspora, a distinguished educational and leadership program for women of African descent, a co-writer of a documentary based on her scholarship, Vodun, A Theology of Liberation 2021 by Dalian Adolfo, a good friend of ours, and Verona Spence Adolfo, his wife. Dr. Desir is featured in the 2024 documentary by award-winning filmmaker Mati Diop Dahomey. The Queen Mother recently served as the international advisor of the Abolish Slavery Network, USA, and was the ambassador to North America of the International Movement for Reparations, Martinique. The past chairperson of the NGO Committee for the Elimination of Racism, Afrophobia, and Colorism, SEA, now incorporates children's rights in her work, especially as it pertains to religious violence and detention in Benin Republic. Her Royal Majesty is the mother of creative entrepreneur and writer, His Royal Majesty Prince Marshall Davis. As a scholar, her intellectual formation is African-centered in critical theory, postmodern human geography, and theology. The Queen Mother studied and graduated from Barnard College, Columbia University for a BA. My mother also went to Columbia. Center for Curatorial Studies, Bard College for MA, and the New Seminary for Doctorate of Ministry, that is Enthronement and Mandates. Since her enthronement, Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir has traveled extensively to promote the Benin Republic and African spirituality. Her role involves not only guiding first-time visitors, but also facilitating repatriation and dual citizenship for members of the African diaspora, including African Americans, Haitians, Martinicans, and other individuals from the Caribbean. She has been instrumental in fostering a deeper understanding of the complexities of transnationalism and the responsibilities that come with it. Festival of the Diaspora and Global Engagements. One of her notable contributions was her participation in the Festival of the Diaspora in Medellin, known as the City of Eternal Spring. As a featured speaker on 2 panels, Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir, her insights were highly regarded. She sponsored 5 Afro-Colombian women to attend the festival, thereby enhancing their exposure to global change makers and fostering international connections. Through her work with the Royal Palace of the African Diaspora, she collaborates with various entities to create public educational programs and produce scholarly documentation. These initiatives are designed to assist heads of state, government, and non-government organizations, as well as institutions focused on building bridges between Africa and her diaspora. In terms of educational and leadership programs, the Imperial Corps Agodje of the African Diaspora, founded by Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir in 2022, stands as a testament to her commitment to education and leadership among women of African descent. This program aims to empower and inspire women to take on leadership roles and contribute to their communities. Also, in terms of impact on the Haitian and Caribbean communities, she has been a prolific advocate of traditional African religion and heritage. Her position as Queen Mother has paved the way for countless Haitians and individuals from the Caribbean to explore and repatriate to the Benin Republic. This significant achievement underscores her influence and dedication to reconnecting the African diaspora with their ancestral roots. Also, in terms of thought leadership and international recognition, Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir is a recognized thought leader in African transnationalism. Her contributions include leading a workshop on African identity and reparations before the International Committee of Enthronement, organizing and presenting at high-profile events such as the United Nations 2024 Summit of the Future, official side events, and second UN Permanent Forum for People of African Descent in 2023. Her engagements at these forums highlight her expertise and commitment to addressing issues pertinent to the African diaspora on a global stage. In conclusion, Her Royal Majesty Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir Semevo I continues to be a beacon of leadership and advocacy for the African diaspora. Her efforts in promoting African spirituality, facilitating dual citizenship, and addressing the challenges of transnationalism have left an indelible mark on the global community. With her unwavering dedication to education, leadership, and cultural heritage, she remains a pivotal figure in bridging the worlds of Africa and her diaspora. So with no further ado, I bring to you the one, the only, the Blacknificent, the Blacktacular, the Blackcellent, the Blackorific, and the Black Powerful, Her Royal Majesty Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir Semevo I.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. And in fact, before I actually speak, in our traditions of IET, before we begin anything, we exchange the words honor and respect. So when I say honor or honneur, you please say respect. We'll do that 3 times and then proceed. Honneur.
Respect.
Honneur.
Respect. Let me let people come off of mute. Is it just for me or should everyone do it?
Everyone.
Okay, so I'm gonna let people unmute themselves and then we are
We'll do
just
it the
gonna
final
maintain.
time.
All right, so everybody, you can unmute. When she says honneur, you can say respect.
Respect.
Honneur.
Respect.
Okay. Parole dit, parole fait. Let it be done. Thank you. We can.
Everyone can go back on mute and we will let our Queen Mother be the only one who is speaking. Me, myself, I will also go on mute. So the audience is yours, Queen Mother.
Okay. Thank you. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here amongst all of you. I'm delighted to see so much interest in citizenship in Benin Republic. We are really, as African peoples, at an extraordinary time for reasons good and bad. Good because there are so many opportunities that have opened up across the continent, recognizing the place of the diaspora, welcoming us in many, many ways. And Benin is actually one of the first French-speaking countries to do so. It's also a critical time because it isn't just we as Africans in the New World, African descendants, who are looking to repatriate. There's a whole movement of migration and tremendous demographic change that is taking place here and right now in the United States since January of this year. The searches for dual citizenship, for repatriation, expats, all of those numbers have gone up exponentially because there's a tremendous amount of fear and concern about what is happening in this country and, of course, what will happen to us. I did submit a video. It's about 4 minutes, I think, that provides some background and history to the forthcoming discussion. I hope you have access to it, and perhaps we can take a look at it now, and then I'll talk more about what's happening specifically with regard to citizenship in Benin shortly thereafter.
Okay, so let me pull it up. Give me 1 second to do so. I had it queued.
And while you're doing that, my roots are from the kingdom of Dahomey by way of my father, from Cameroon and Congo by way of my mother. I have been going back and forth to Benin for just about 30 years, but only became enthroned as the Queen Mother in 2020, and then as the Queen Mother of the African Diaspora in 2022. Okay.
Right. Beautiful. Thank you for that background. So I will go ahead and get started.
Yes, please. Recently, the Republic of Benin made a stupendous announcement by way of its National Assembly. African descendants will be granted citizenship. It's a joyous moment for all. We thank the President and Head of State, His Excellency Mr. Patrice Talon, and the President of the National Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Bohonou Louis Valanou, who announced the effective matriculation of Article 96 to Benin's constitution. The Beninese government's bold move is a fitting end to the UN International Decade for People of African Descent 2015 to 2024, whose theme is recognition, justice, and development. We in the African diaspora can now proudly say we have been legally recognized. Aibobo. The true victors of this battle, however, are people like Mère and Père Ja, the most senior members of the diaspora, Madame Sandra Claire Aksamia Martial and her husband Kweku with their children, the members of Mir Benin, our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, like the International Movement for Reparations, attorney Maître Georges Emmanuel. Here in the United States, Brother Darren Crenshaw, Da Utonji, but also Da Vedikon Deka, also known as the Most Reverend Dr. Prince J. Spates. And there are our Beninese allies, such as Madame Marie-Lucienne Vintame and attorney Maître Lokonon Tadoho, and journalist Mr. Sham Lekpon. These are just some of the people I know personally who have been working on multiple fronts to build bridges between the African diaspora and Benin.
Okay, some people are saying that they are hearing, other people are saying they are not hearing. I did share audio. Are people hearing? If you could put in the chat and let us know. Yeah. Okay, others are saying I hear it well or no. So some people are saying I hear it well, others are saying they don't hear the audio. It's shared by Zoom. I did share it. I'll stop the share and reshare again. I heard it, but it was low. I understood it. So I'll start again because it's a very important message. I'm going to stop this share and restart again. So please bear with us as I do so. Share sound optimized and okay. So you may, if the audio is low on your side, you may have to increase your volume. Someone did say they hear it, but it's low for them. So please do so.
Be it directly or indirectly, we are all...
I'll start from the beginning.
Recently, the Republic of Benin made a stupendous announcement by way of its National Assembly. African descendants will be granted citizenship. It's a joyous moment for all. We thank the President and Head of State, His Excellency Mr. Patrice Talon, and the President of the National Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Bohonou Louis Valanou, who announced the effective matriculation of Article 96 to Benin's constitution. The Beninese government's bold move is a fitting end to the UN International Decade for People of African Descent 2015 to 2024, whose theme is recognition, justice, and development. We in the African diaspora can now proudly say we have been legally recognized. Aibobo. The true victors of this battle, however, are people like Mère and Père Ja, the most senior members of the diaspora, Madame Sandra Claire Aksamia Martial and her husband Kweku with their children, the members of Mir Benin, our brothers and sisters in the diaspora like the International Movement for Reparations, attorney Maître Georges Emmanuel. Here in the United States, Brother Darren Crenshaw, Da Utonji, but also Da Vedikon Deka, also known as the Most Reverend Dr. Prince J. Spates. And there are our Beninese allies, such as Madame Marie-Lucienne Vintame and attorney Maître Lokonon Tadoho and journalist Mr. Sham Lekpon. These are just some of the people I know personally who have been working on multiple fronts to build bridges between the African diaspora and Benin. Be it directly or indirectly, we are all part of the right to return movement, the droit de retour. The decision to enable the repatriation of Afro-descendants to Benin Republic is justice, reparatory justice. For the moment, no political rights or access to Beninese civil service is permitted. However, the issue of development will be gradually realized as members of the diaspora have access to land grants, create public and private partnerships, attain housing, pay taxes, and have political representation. While obtaining citizenship has been a struggle that has taken many, many years, the real hard work is about to begin. It's imperative that as we embark on this transnational journey, one that is also profoundly a geospiritual one, that we think and act strategically. Namely, our response must be a geostrategic one in scope. Benin is one of the first, if not the first, French-speaking country in Africa to formally provide the option of naturalization to the African diaspora. The former kingdom of Dahomey is one of 7 countries on the continent to grant citizenship to third-generation dependents and beyond. It is important that the diaspora know that there is much happening in the region, including conflicts. The present and future heads of state of Benin must remember that those of us who have taken the risk and are on this mission to repatriate are first and foremost Pan-Africanists, and that the disposition of state policy, regional and foreign policies must be mindful of that. Well, we in the diaspora will not all pack our bags and fly off to Benin. Even if African descendants received our reparation checks tomorrow from former European enslavers, we should not all leave. We should not all leave. Recalling the recolonization debates among 19th century Africans in the United States, our literal blood, sweat, and tears built the wealth of countries we were forced to inhabit. The various types of infrastructures already built in places like the United States and Europe should not be abandoned. The chaos deliberately perpetuated in places like Haiti to force displacement of African descendants should continue to be challenged, our collective heritage protected, and our legacies fought for in all places. As Queen Mother of the African Diaspora, I call on the African diaspora in the United States, the Caribbean, Latin America, and South America to participate in a series of hybrid online and in-person dialogues on transnationalism. We must unpack how we operationalize and make meaningful the linkages and repatriation efforts called for to make this and other opportunities unfolding a complete victory for African descendants everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I maxed out the sound and people said that did the trick for them. So some could hear it from the beginning. So I did max out the sound. So hope everybody got it. And I'm seeing, yeah, much better, much better. All right, our Queen Mother, back over to you. You're muted. Oh, I got it. All right, sorry. Yeah. No. Okay. I'm going to make you a co-host so you can unmute at your leisure.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for playing the video and for increasing the volume. It made a huge difference. I wanted to start with this video just to provide some context. This film or video was made over the summer, but I, again, wanted to give you a sense of what is going on and some of my concerns. Let me say Ibaye to one of the elders who passed away, Miaja. She was the senior, the elder with the white Rastafari dress on. She made her transition at the same time that this law came into place. She and her husband, Piaja, have been in the diaspora for over 40 years and have a wonderful ecological park that when you come to Benin, you should definitely come visit. So, you know, as I start out, we always have to acknowledge the authorities who, having listened to members of the diaspora, some of the people whose faces I identified and names I've presented, as well as myself, and then people outside of the diaspora. People like Sister Abina James and Ambassador Erica Bennett, Brother Gilbert Buhari, who have all been a part of the Dowoti movement, this movement that acknowledges our right as African descendants to return to the continent. They've done this work in other African states, from Ghana all the way to Tanzania. And we give gratitude for all the work that has been done, because it is our collective efforts that finally got the government to listen to what we have to say. But I have to say to my fellow kings, give thanks and honor to them for, before the government, recognizing a space and making way for the African diaspora by enthroning me as the Queen Mother of the African diaspora for Benin Republic. For my own self, the journey to Benin, even though it's been a long-standing one, but in my capacity has not been an easy one. And so I don't want anyone who's interested in citizenship anywhere, not in Benin, not in Ghana, not in South Africa, not in Burkina Faso. I don't want anyone to think that this is an easy process. I don't want anyone to have romantic ideas about going back home. While there is a need to be there, it's not necessarily something meant for everyone. And as I stated at the end of the video, a number of us do need to stay in the spaces that we literally fought for, bled for, sweated, were our ancestors transitioned over. These two are our homes. But those of us who have the duty and or desire to return, there's a lot of work to do, a lot of work to do. In the case of Benin Republic, the act that was passed, and I did provide a link to the English transition of it. I think it is in the chat, but it's Act number 2024, dated September 2nd, which is interesting because it's my birthday of 2024. It is allowing the African diaspora and people who can prove that they are of sub-Saharan African descent to return home. The link will take you directly to the Beninese website. You'll see the 3 chapters that are there that speak to the general provisions, one of which I just outlined, which talks about anyone whose genealogy shows that they have sub-Saharan African descent and were deported outside of the continent as part of the slave trade of the Ma'afa, Maganzemi, we are able to apply for citizenship. The 2nd chapter speaks of terms and conditions of recognition. First of all, you have to be of age. You have to be able to provide evidence of your ancestry, and you cannot be the national of another African state. That is, you must be the national of a country that is not on the African continent itself, or not technically part of the African Union, in other words. There is proof that has to be provided. The official document includes DNA testing that shows that you have, in fact, sub-Saharan African heritage. But I also think there will be other things that are going to be considered, oral histories, and maybe those oral histories have to be transcribed, and maybe other documents will be required to support that, because not everyone wants to, and not everyone can afford to get a DNA test. And then there is another element which hasn't been talked about at length, but has to be considered, just because I know in the spiritual community, people have been taking advantage of getting consultations, of getting readings from Babalawos and Iyalorishas to affirm their African and their sub-Saharan roots as well. So these are some of the elements that have to be provided. There are provisions that request that one specifically go to the embassy, I'm sorry, not the embassy, but to the Minister of Justice. All the documents that have to be presented will have to be physically presented there in Cotonou. I spoke to the embassy here recently and said, I don't think that's going to be possible for everyone, and that I'm encouraging them to think about facilitating things so that those of us who are, for instance, here in the United States, if we have to physically drop those documents off, then to drop it off in Washington, D.C. And wherever else the government, the Beninese government, has an embassy. I'm encouraging them to facilitate that, because not everyone can make the trip to Benin, let alone do it twice in a short period of time. So we'll see what happens with that. But for now, the request is that papers be deposited at the Ministry of Justice, who will review everything that is submitted and then turn it into the Council of Ministers. And it is that council that will make the final decision about securing citizenship. Now, one can be granted provisional citizenship, and that will allow you to be in the country or to have a passport that is essentially it's a temporary one. You'll have access to and from the country without any restrictions, but we won't have formal citizenship until that happens. One has to be mindful of a certain set of requirements that will be made known to us. Requirements that I would believe have to show that we have been coming back and forth to the country, that we have established some real interest in Benin's growth in the various cultures and societies that are there, that we have remained in good standing as individuals, not getting into legal trouble, that sort of thing. Because some of these issues, especially legal ones, are going to be grounds for removing one's provisional citizenship and be a deterrent to securing citizenship at all in the country. So these are things that have to be considered. Again, it is the Council of Ministers that makes that final decision about who will be the beneficiary of a passport. But once you have that, once you have citizenship, it does extend itself to one's descendants. So your children, your children's children will be citizens of Benin. Now, one will also have the ability to withdraw Beninese citizenship. You would have to make that formal request if, I don't know, something comes up. You may be working for a government, your home government, and there might be provisions that prevent you from becoming a citizen elsewhere. So those are like individual factors that come into place. But again, I've established the link, provided the link in the chat that will lead you directly to, it's just a 3-page document that speaks to citizenship. You can read that. I've also on my YouTube channel, I've done 2 out of 3 videos that goes through all of the chapters and the sections of the chapters, explains everything to everyone, answers anticipated questions, and the last chapter or the last video, because it's a 3-part video, the last one will probably go on tonight or tomorrow, the latest. So those are some of the things that I wanted to share with you today. But let me say something, because a number of people have gotten in touch with me prior to this, and this is one of the reasons why we are in fact hosting this conversation, because of concerns. Concerns that relate to having access to government officials. Let me say first that I sympathize, I empathize with frustrations that people have had. People have called me, they've written me, they've texted me about, well, Queen Mother, I've tried to go to the website. I don't see an application there. I've called. No one has returned my call. I have reached out to people to inquire about, I don't know, something, and there's been no response. And again, I empathize. I regret the delay. I can only attribute the delayed responses to the fact that the government wasn't expecting such an enthusiastic response. That they're a little overwhelmed at the number of people who are interested in citizenship, and so are really just now getting a handle as to how many people are interested. There's a whole lot of questions that people are asking, and things that perhaps the government had not anticipated, and thus the delay. So I'm asking all of you to be patient. If you've already made inquiries, just be patient, because I know, having spoken to one of the deputy ambassadors or the cultural attaché at the embassy, that the Cotonou is working as quickly as possible, moving as quickly as possible on this matter. Again, I think people were a little overwhelmed, not realizing there'd be so much interest. But having said that, one of the countries who has been at the forefront of this matter of citizenship has been Ghana itself. And Ghana, too, is a little overwhelmed with the number of applications, the kind of questions, the issues that are raised. And so we're all in this together. We're all in, it's a novel moment. It's a powerful moment for all of us. So we've got to be patient. As I'm speaking to you, I'm thinking about an adage that says, if you want to move quickly, move by yourself, go by yourself. But if you want to have an experience, you move with a group. And we're all engaged in community work and nation building, so we know that it takes time to move like that. So I'm asking all of you on behalf of the Beninese government, even though I'm not yet their official representative on this matter, to wait a little bit. I think in the next couple of months, the documentation that we're seeking will be available. And at that point, we will have, I trust, another conversation about what are the next steps. Now, having said that, let me make a couple of French, start taking French classes. If you can, and if you're interested, write me. I'm going to set up a class with someone in Benin to teach one of the traditional languages, which is Fongbe. So start learning the languages. Start doing some research, learn the history of Benin, learn the history of the kingdom of Dahomey. And I'm saying the kingdom of Dahomey because there are people who think the kingdom of Dahomey and the kingdom of Benin are the same place. They are not. They were related peoples, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing. The kingdom of Dahomey is now present-day Benin Republic. The kingdom of Benin, unfortunately, no longer exists, but it was found in Nigeria. So again, learn the history a little bit so that you are prepared and you are clear about what people you are associated with and where you want to be. If you haven't done your DNA test, and you can, I would suggest that you have that taken care of. To the extent that you can, establish ties with, say, a Beninese student association, or you can work with me. I am the patron of La Solidarité orphanage in Benin. We do work raising funds for them to build a security fence, to purchase poultry and do animal husbandry so that they become more self-sufficient. We raise funds so that the young people there who are now adolescents have clean bathrooms and safe spaces to be in. But it's always important to show any government that, in fact, you have real interest in being a part of the community that you are seeking citizenship in. So those are options that you have. If you're in Atlanta, there is, in fact, a sister city commission in that is Cotonou and Atlanta. You can get in touch with folks there to find out what are they doing. In Alabama, and I think one of my cadets, Delisha Williams, who is in Benin with me, is actually one of our sort of counselors in Atlanta and Mobile. And so with working with the descendants community there, this is a way of showing genuine interest in Benin. These are all things that I know other countries have done to help establish sincere interest in citizenship, because this becomes a factor. What else could you do? As you get closer to the date of depositing your dossier, I would get a medical examination done to make sure you have a clean bill of health and to be able to present that to the government should they ask. If you have legal issues, to the extent that you can wrap those things up, and hopefully it's not a criminal matter, then maybe it's a sworn affidavit. I don't know what the government will ask for eventually, but to prove that you are an upstanding citizen that way, or have paid your dues and can be a contributing member to Beninese society once you arrive. So these are some things that I don't know yet, because the government is still figuring out what is it exactly that they're going to be demanding of us. But as I said, given my experience of working with other countries and members of the right to return movement, these are things that have come up. And so I think Benin will do the same. I mentioned my YouTube page, the channel. When I posted the videos, there were some interesting questions that came up, questions that I have asked the Beninese government and am awaiting a response to, questions that have to do with what percentage of sub-Saharan African blood do you need to have? How much of it has to be tied to Dahomey? How much of it has to be, could just be general sub-Saharan African blood? These are questions they may choose to answer, or they may throw their hands up and say, you know what, this is too much. We just want you to be from sub-Saharan Africa. And that's cool. But I've also received questions from people who they didn't come directly to me, but they went to somebody else, and that somebody else came to me. And it was an interesting question about people who have taken their DNA tests. They learned that they are 4% of sub-Saharan African descent, but they are white presenting and white identifying. And my most diplomatic answer indicated that I don't think that's enough, and that, but again, the government might decide otherwise. But I think this, I would argue that the move to provide citizenship for African descendants is a reparatory one. It is about reparatory justice. It is about us first and foremost. And those of us who have faced and dealt with and continue to deal with the intergenerational trauma of forced expulsion from the African continent, Jim Crow, apartheid, colonization, all of these crimes against humanity that began with the transatlantic slave trade in captive Africans. So maybe eventually there'll be some melanin poor people receiving citizenship, but right now the priority is for us. And to think of other questions that have been asked, but maybe you have some, and we can open up the mics and I can respond as best as I can.
All right. And I do see some questions that were posted in the chat.
Okay.
We can go through those. Also, if people have questions, they can also raise their hand, and I will allow them to come off of mute. I just wanted to share. So when I saw the picture of Mayor Ja, we actually gave her an award at the first Abibitumi conference on Black Power. We met her when she came with a delegation on citizenship. She wanted to find out how we did that in Ghana. And we visited her and Mayor Ja on multiple occasions in Benin. So definitely, she was with the grandcestors, the great-great-grandcestors, and, we honor her by continuing this work. Um, so people can raise their hand. Like I said, I'll also go back through. I see some questions that came on. So I'm going to try to go to the top and then come down.
Yes, I've actually come across Sister Ama. Thank you for your question. This is a question that other people have raised to me in the past, and that has to do with the issue of homophobia. I would say that in Benin Republic, I've seen, I don't like the word tolerance because it's like you're putting up with something. But I can't use the word acceptance either. That would be hypocritical of me. Um, I think when one is a member of the LGBTQ community, one has to keep in mind in many traditional African societies, it's a deeply stratified one. And while I would like to say there's room for everyone, I think it's not a place yet where everybody can be fully themselves. Even me, in my capacity as Queen Mother, I still have to find myself sort of holding back a little bit because there are things that I do, ways that I think that are not considered normal. Normal for you and I here in the Americas, in the US, normal in Haiti, normal in Brazil, but not normal there. And so as we move towards this matter of citizenship, again, this is the work of transnationalism, there are a series of conversations that we need to have because I would also argue that I'm not, and I didn't come to Benin to give up everything about being Haitian, give up everything about being Cuban, to give up everything about being African American. All those spaces that I navigate, that I code switch in and out of, I work too hard. We work too hard. We've built societies, we've developed civilizations, music, song, dance, any number of things that are ours. And those things need to be honored and respected. They're not to be let go of. And so I think we're going to have to make a concerted effort to have conversation about all aspects of our culture, including sexuality, so that the countries that we're calling home or that we're returning to understand how our experiences as Africans has changed and is an extension of who they are. And that we arrive at some common understanding about what this new space is going to look like. Cultures and societies change, attitudes have to change, but then there are things that are not going to change. And it may be that and I'm not saying anything about Benin because I believe, especially in the religious community, what is this? It's flesh, right? And if we are divine beings having a human experience, then it is that inner self, that inner person that has to be paid attention to. But this is, the spiritual, the intellectual in me. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone feels that way. So there's a little bit of experimenting that has to be done. I would move with caution, but I would also move as a group. I wouldn't want to have anyone find themselves in a situation where they're being attacked. Even I myself, with my long-standing relationship in Benin and as a Queen Mother, there's a word I absolutely hate. I cringe when I hear it, and it is the word yovo. And yovo has usually meant somebody who has meant white, white meaning foreigner. But look at me closely. Do I look white to you? No. Some of you might say I'm light skinned, but I'm a Black woman. Point bar, and so to be called Yovo, to be called white, to be called a foreigner, is still something that is hurtful and problematic. It is one of those things that we need to talk about in these transnational conversations, which has to include people from Ghana, people from Benin, people from Tanzania, people from Senegal, from Burkina Faso, all those places that are now giving us citizenship, that us versus them mentality has to change. Because we're coming in as fully formed beings, people with rich, complicated societies, who have innovated all kinds of things, and we're bringing that wealth of knowledge, of experience, of information, and in some cases, money to back home. And so we need to feel welcome as well, and allowed to feel at ease there. But having said that, US governments and European governments cannot impose their will on other nation states, their values on other nation states. Things have to happen organically. The sovereignty of African nation states has to be respected at every level, in every domain. So I hope I've sufficiently answered that question.
All right, thank you. Also, just in terms of the language, we definitely would love to offer those through Abibitumi. One of the main things that we've been doing over the years is language. I also see a question. So a lot of diasporans, as you're aware, have gotten citizenship in Ghana, and they're asking if they have citizenship in Ghana and the US, do they not qualify? Does the Ghana disqualify? And, there was an issue. There was a sister from Congo who's married to a Jamaican, and she wanted to get Ghanaian citizenship. And they said, oh, because you come from Congo, you don't qualify. But what about diasporans who have already gotten citizenship in Ghana or Burkina or Sierra Leone? Does that disqualify them, or is it specifically saying those of the descendants of those who were enslaved only? If you can provide clarity on that.
There's been first of all, there is an ECOWAS passport. There are 17 countries that are member of that grouping of people. That includes Ghana, Burkina, Niger, Gambia. There's a number of countries, so it's a total of 17. And with the free movement of people that the AU has permitted, whatever passport you have, it's almost like being in the European Union. Doesn't matter if your passport is from, or your citizenship is in Ghana. If you need to move and work, and even I would argue resettle in Benin, for example, you should be able to do that. You have that free movement. So your passport, again, of whatever country you belong to, allows you to move freely within a certain block of countries. If you were going to, say, Morocco, or you were moving to Tanzania. Tanzania is on the other side of the continent. Tanzania is not a part of that particular group, but Tanzania is part of another group of nation states that has several members. And at least in theory, that passport should allow you to move freely in that region.
Okay. Part of, or just a follow-up to this, and I see a hand raised, as Nataki. So just in terms of movement is on one level, but let's say, for example, in Ghana, you have to be a Ghanaian citizen for the other benefits, such as, ownership of land. There's a, difference between citizenship there. For tuition at the university, for example. So even though Nigerians are part of ECOWAS, when they come to University of Ghana, they have to pay, quote unquote, foreign tuition in dollars, the same as somebody. It's not the best, to me, but, beyond the movement. I think that's probably why somebody who would be looking at Benin citizenship, who's already a member of the ECOWAS bloc, may be interested, because there may be certain benefits that come with Beninois citizenship beyond just being able to travel there. I don't know if, maybe.
I think part of the movement allows folks to conduct business there too. Now, what the stipulations are with regard to say tuition probably varies from place to place. Every country has its own issues. Even here in the United States, if you are not a citizen, I'm sorry, if you're not a resident of New York State, you might just be next door in Connecticut. You still have to pay out-of-state tuition. So these are things that, again, I believe, I would argue, and if they're not, they're going to be doing it now, and the Beninese government is going to have to consider. But these are issues that are also beyond Benin itself. These are issues that relate to some of the acts, some of the proclamations, some of the mandates of the African Union. So there has to be some consensus arrived about these specific matters. I don't know that I can't argue that there is an advantage to being one place versus another. But I can tell if you're in Ghana, you're in a really good place right now, because most of these answers, a lot of the questions, the experimentation with this, and it is an experiment. It's a social experiment, because we're in the process of operationalizing in many ways Pan-Africanism. We're trying to understand, what does dual citizenship really look like? What does that mean? And in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of our banking systems, in terms of our healthcare systems, in terms of day-to-day interaction. So even if one state has the matter resolved, another one may not necessarily. And again, we're pioneers in this process. And I am not using that word lightly. So this question cannot be answered, but I think what it does necessitate is continued engagement with, if there is an office of the diaspora, which I know there is in Ghana, I would contact them. I would contact, you actually have an ambassador to the diaspora there, so work with them. In the case of Benin, I have asked to be the official representative of the government to do this work, to respond to these questions, to get more information, to facilitate dialogue. You can support me by sending a letter to the embassy asking that the Queen Mother be the one handling these things, because you know where you can find me, right? And I'm responding. So there are things like that could be done, but most of all, we have to remain patient. We should also work towards doing some other things. There is the whole sixth region movement within the African Union. And for, I'd say, about a decade, there are 20 seats available for the diaspora. Do you know how many of those seats have been filled? As my son used to say when he was 5, 0. So we need to work with the African Union, let them know there is this movement afoot. They're aware of the fact that there's this movement of the right to return is there, but these seats have to be filled, because for now, at least in a place like Benin, and I think that's still the case in Ghana, we don't have any legislative representation. We're not going to be able to vote. So in some ways in Benin, at least, I can say citizenship is it's more of a symbolic gesture, and it's one that's going to take on teeth and resonance and have some real weight as more and more of us get engaged, as more and more of us make inquiries about purchasing land and or purchase land, as more and more of us open up businesses. It is a society that I said is highly stratified, and so things will happen slowly, but it will open up. But in the meantime, in between time, we have to maybe attack isn't the right word, but we have to advance on two fronts. So we will work with whatever country, whatever regional entities that are there, but we also have to put pressure on the African Union so that we have our voices heard in that space, and we have some form of juridical power or legal power and political power there as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. I see a question that came through a couple of times. Is there a preferred DNA company? I don't know if they've already articulated that. I know African ancestry is very popular. I just did a interview. Someone asked me something about that, but do you know that?
Well, that is a question that I had, but I don't think that there is a preferred company. I mean, African ancestry is just marvelous in terms of the richness of the details that they provide, but not everybody has the $300 that they're asking for that test. So there are other companies, and there are well-established ones that you can go to that I would recommend. But if you can do African ancestry, I would go with Sister Gina and her team. Anything else?
Beautiful. A question: is there anything in place for Benin to build a connect with IT to be able to travel from IT straight to Benin and vice versa? Is that in place or coming?
Well, keeping in mind my poor home state has just been in a hot mess for quite some time. I know there have been conversations about that, and this conversation about it's not just Benin and Haiti. Benin and Haiti go back a long ways. When Benin was known as Dahomey, it was Dahomey 1. Haiti was called Dahomey 2. So Dahomey 1 and Dahomey 2. That's how tight we are. And in our spiritual traditions, especially in Voodoo, it's like looking in a mirror. So there's been long-standing spiritual and historical ties there, and in fact, for many years, the Haitian embassy had like a consulate in a consulate or an embassy in Benin. That was undone a few years ago, but I think they'll probably institute that. But in terms of flights, we're not ready to do that. There are people who have been working on this for, I'd say, as far as I know, for at least 15 years, not just between Haiti and Africa, but all of Latin America and the Caribbean, direct flights to Africa. I mean, when you stop and think about it historically, they deported us, right? Sent us elsewhere. But then when it comes to our ability to return, there's no direct way to do that. We still have to go by way of Europe. And if you're denied a transit visa in Europe to come to Africa, then how are you going to get there? So these are, again, things that have to be sorted out. These are things that demands have to be made to rectify that. We've got to lobby, we've got to call on our lawmakers, we've got to work with professionals in a variety of sectors to get these changes made. So for right now, no, there is no direct route, but I believe that, I don't know if it's Ethiopian Air, maybe have been negotiating with Bermuda, I believe, or to have flights going from that island to the African continent. And if that's the case, those of us who are in Latin America and certainly in Haiti, well, that's just a hop, skip, and a jump. Easier to get to another country in the Caribbean to catch a flight to Benin Republic, to stop in Miami, go to Paris, and from Paris, for example, or Brussels, come to Benin Republic. Again, these are old issues. People have been working on it for at least 15 years. We're making a little bit of progress. And I hope in the next 5 years, there will be some direct flights.
We're counting on you, Queen Mother, to make it happen. I see a question from Delano Davis. Is citizenship transferable to the spouse? I know that that's the case in Ghana. Is it transferable to adopted children? I don't know if those nuanced details have already been hashed out. If they haven't, fine, but that's a question on the table now.
That's an excellent question. I've seen nothing that says anything about transferring citizenship to spouses. I think, however, your spouse needs to prove that he or she, and if you have adopted children, that they are of African descent. And it may be a case where, especially the person is of age, that they can apply themselves. I don't believe that Benin is in a place where one can automatically transfer. It's almost like a fiance, not visa or visa passport. I don't think that's in place yet. And
Okay, beautiful.
when it is, don't forget, there are provisions in which one has to fulfill within that 3-year, temporary provisional a passport that shows that you yourself are in good standing, that you are committed to being in the society and to working with folks there. So I think some of those things would have to be taken care of before one will be permitted to invite one's spouse in.
Okay. And I also see 3 parts. Do you know of any investment opportunities in Benin? I'm sure there are many. How can those in the Northeast US get in touch with you? Great question. And then also, what steps can be taken to sustain this initiative beyond local administration changes? Merci.
Okay. All right. At the end, or perhaps brother, you can, before you can put my email address in there or my website, that will lead you to my email address. But in terms of investment opportunities, there are some, there will be more. It seemed to me that there's been a sort of a quiet shift from small to medium-sized businesses to more manufacturing based, more, sort of bigger industries that the Talon administration has been focusing on. But I know of any number of NGOs and small companies that I think partnerships need to be established. One of my concerns is I don't want us to enter into Benin and start to segregate ourselves, start to distinguish ourselves in ways that can lead to long-term problems. We can't enter into certain societies with the same kind of, if you will, capitalistic mindset that we have here. Because there are still societies, and very traditional societies, in which it is the collective. And again, there are disparities that we already, when we come into these spaces, we already have. And I'm not going to lie to you, there is some resentment, there's some concern about who are these people? How come they're getting this and they're getting that, and we can't have these things? Why are they getting land and housing that we ourselves don't have? So we've got to move again with caution, with discretion, but there are opportunities there. The Minister of Foreign Affairs should be able to provide a list of organizations that, large organizations that are looking for investors. I know I myself, on a smaller scale, can identify individuals who are seeking investors, or public, or private partnerships can be set up with. So we can put get the website, and you can write me, and we can begin to pursue that matter or those matters.
And I'll go ahead and
Another
put that
question,
into the
another
chat.
part of that question?
Yeah, I was just asking Anna Adwa if she can put your website and info in the chat. She is our all-around fixer and connector of all things. So,
I'm sorry, was there a third part to the question?
what steps can be taken to sustain this initiative beyond local administration changes? Like policy, law, anything along those lines?
What can be done to sustain what, the move for citizenship, or? I don't
Yeah,
understand.
from my understanding, based on what you said, that this is already something that was passed into law for citizenship. So maybe the person wants to clarify, but they say what steps can be taken to sustain this initiative beyond local administration changes. Maybe their concern is if you know, President Talon goes out of power, then maybe things change. I don't know.
No. This was passed. It wasn't just President Talon. It was also the National Assembly that made this determination.
Right.
It seems to me there's no going backwards with this. It doesn't matter who comes into power, for any number of reasons. First of all, there are, I'd say, probably some 250 members of the African diaspora who actually live in Benin, and people who are not working for NGOs and non-expats, but folks who, particularly from Martinique, Guadeloupe, and some of the French-speaking territories. They are territories because they belong to France, but they have left those islands and have repatriated to Benin. They have been involved in a long time struggle for citizenship. And I highlighted Mayan Piaja and Sister Aksamia and her husband Kweku, because they were among the people who are on the ground every day doing that. I began the process before I met them in my own way, in my own capacity. But together, it's our collective efforts that have made this possible. So trust and believe, we've invested way too much. People have literally uprooted their families, and they've left everything behind, everyone they know behind. There's no one who is going to be permitted to undo this matter. And I also believe in the way the word is competition, there's so much going on. In April, if I'm not mistaken, Gambia is having a homecoming ceremony, right? So everybody from sub-Saharan African blood, and but particularly those that connected to Gambia, there's an opportunity for citizenship there. To the north of Benin, we have Burkina Faso. There's a huge trip that is being organized in June, so people can get citizenship there. One of my dear friends, Prince Dynast Amir, every year, if not twice, maybe even 3 times a year, he's up to that, bringing people to Sierra Leone to get their citizenship there. Ghana, everybody's going there to get citizenship. So there is no undoing that. We are too valuable as a people. It is not just the financial resources that we bring, but the intellectual resources, the professionalism, the expertise that is needed to further develop the African continent. We are in many ways undoing the damage, the historic and intergenerational damage of mass deportation, of mass incarceration, and the sapping of intellectual knowledge, of craftsmanship, of artistry, of various sciences that was ripped from the belly of the continent with our forced expulsion there. So we are reversing that, and Africans on the continent recognize the damage that was done as a result of the Ma'afa, and I believe many welcome our return. And while I say that, let me make one more thing I don't want to forget. I want to discourage the kind of a phenomena that I see emerging. I understand it has to be done. There's safety in numbers. And while you're in a new place, you need to be with people who have a similar kind of experience as you do. For instance, there's some housing that is being made apparently for the diaspora in Benin. Now you have people like Axamia and I've met a local home and other people who are building villages for the diaspora, like the Miwa village and Meampeaja have their eco park that welcomes people. But those spaces are intended to be sort of transitional ones, like settlement houses. You're there for a while and then you move on. But I also understand that there's like an apartment building or something that is being constructed that is for the diaspora. Again, do that if you need to, because it's not easy to buy. Well, unless you have cash in hand, buying land or buying property, that's a process that can take a while. But do not stay in that one place, in that one compound all the time, speaking English just because it's easier for you. You know, be a part of Beninese society, be a part of whatever African home, continental home that is yours. Engage with people there. Don't segregate yourselves. We don't want a repeat of what happened in Liberia in the late 19th century, early 20th century, where eventually so much tension built up between Africans who left the United States as a part of the recolonization process, came to Liberia, and then got into just ugly fracas and eventual civil war between the continental Africans and then the US-born ones. We don't want that to happen in the future. So again, learning languages, learning the culture. Yes, stay in a settlement house for a year or two if necessary, and it is necessary, but eventually branch out. And similarly, I know part of my work and part of the work that I'm calling on the royal houses and other traditional spaces, the religious houses to do is to get their people to learn our languages to come to events that we will be organizing, eventually come to the places that we used to call home, so that there is this familiarity there and we're able to receive each other with truly open and loving arms. Any
All right, Blacktastic. I see a couple of other questions as well. I've been to Benin several times, as I mentioned, and I know they have companies, someone mentioned investing. There's a Suka Spirit where they make their own laptops and smart glasses and things like that. We've been to the Songhai project. Maybe if you can just talk about like just those types of places or types of experiences so people can get a little bit more about Benin.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, would you mind repeating that question, please?
Yeah, I was saying that in my times going to Benin, I know they had Asuka Spirit. That's AS World is the website where they make their own laptops and smart glasses. And then also got a chance to go to the Songhai project where they're doing a lot of Black amazing work in terms of sustainability, just all around. For people who may not have been to Benin, can you share anything that the Python, like anything that you think people should know about Benin that they should come and engage with, whether that's on the tech side or traditional side or anything else?
That's I'm showing my age. That's that's a world I know less about. I do know that there are some phenomenal young people who have opened up tech-related industries there. I know technicians who take the most rinky-dink laptop and cell phone and refurbish it like new. I know that there are all sorts of opportunities there, and I think one of the things that we can do in terms of the diaspora is to take those knowledges and share create companies or partner with some of those companies or make investments. One of the things I would love to have happen in Benin, they do it in Nigeria all the time. There's this big tech weekend that takes place. I mean, Nigeria is just, in terms of Lagos, a couple of hours away from Cotonou, but there's no reason why, for that matter, on one hand, there's no reason why if you're in Benin, you can't go to Nigeria to do that, learn there, and again, take advantage of being able to move back and forth. But it would also be important and useful for a kind of technology week to take place, or technology weekend to take place in Benin as well. The same things that are shortcomings in a place are also the things that make it rich with possibility. There is so much to be done in Benin. There's so much to realize in all domains, not just technology, even in the arts. And it isn't that people don't have their own art forms there, but we love films. But there's maybe like one or two movie theaters in Cotonou. Forget about places outside of the capital. So there are opportunities for new investments, new spaces to be created that will strengthen and make the entirety of the society much richer. One of the advantages I know of working in African countries as a whole is that there tend to be fewer restrictions, fewer regulations there, so that one can build and one can amass a fortune, if you will. So take advantage of these things, but you do need to be registered in the country to do business there. And again, where you can create and establish partnerships with already existing structures, I would really encourage that as well. Why reinvent the wheel? And then, we have to avoid coming in with our own sort of hegemonic sensibilities and sense of exceptionalism. That's not how we're going to build our new societies. There's a massive morphic reservoir that we are all tapping into in terms of our collective knowledges, memories, history, and that has to manifest itself in our day-to-day existence, in our interactions with each other, on this plane as well. So think about moving in a circle, think about moving in a spiral, so that we are constantly building and engaging and enriching each other that way. But there are massive opportunities. And another thing, one of the beauties of Benin is it is a small country. And because it is a small country, the likelihood of success becomes much more immediate. It's much more evident, and its impact is a national one. So that is another aspect of the beauty of investing there. And you have a tremendously resourceful and industrious people. I have never seen people get things together like that. When you need something, people have to stay up all night, not sleep for 2 or 3 days to get something done. It is done. It is done. And so there is no, there's no losing in this process. You can build, and we can build together in Benin.
And Blacktastic, I think I caught the questions that I saw. I did put a link in the chat for the Asuka Spirit website for those who are interested. That's the laptops and smart glasses and other things that I mentioned. The Songhai project, I would definitely recommend that people check that out. They do a lot in terms of sustainable building. You mentioned Mayor and Paraja. There's a lot to be seen in Benin, as Queen Mother has alluded to, and definitely a lot of opportunity that arise there. One thing that you mentioned is that a lot of places are now dealing with citizenship, and for our part as well. So we're in Ghana, but part of even bringing you on, even though we're known for Repatriate to Ghana, is that this is definitely not a competition. We definitely want our people to come home, whether that is any of these fragments that were thought up at the Berlin conference. We want our people to come home, Ghana, Benin, Burkina, the Gambia, so forth and so on. And matter of fact, on the 9th, we have Mansa Fode, who's going to come on and speak of citizenship in Sierra Leone. So our vision is basically a consortium of all of us working together. Maybe Ghana isn't right for you, go to Benin. Benin isn't right for you, go to Sierra. Come home and help build the land of Black people, and we're gonna make it do what it do. Any other
Yes.
questions? Okay,
Well,
and I do see
I'm sorry, I'll answer the questions, but while it's still in my head, I don't want to forget to mention that I am organizing a trip to Benin for those who are interested in going there and depositing their dossiers for citizenship. My plan is to do this in October. That way, everybody has time to secure whatever paperwork they need, notify whomever needs to be notified, get their money together, and we will go to Benin in October. The plan is to have the Minister of Justice, perhaps the Minister of Foreign Affairs, receive us in ceremony, talk to us about investment opportunities, maybe visit some of the places that could be temporary, housing, do a little sightseeing, but to give you a taste of what Benin is like, and to make the trip worthwhile for you. But again, that would be in October of 2025, and I hope that Brother Abenfo will be able to have another conversation with follow-up once all of the documents and the checklist and a number of things that I've actually asked the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the embassy and others to provide for us as we prepare to submit a citizenship.
All right, and I see a question: what documents are they asking for, or likely to ask for? I'm not sure if that's entirely clear.
That's not
but
clear, and I did allude to that earlier. You need to have. I would start working on the following. Definitely have to have your DNA tests. I would make sure that my health is in good standing. So get a medical exam. Say if you're coming with me in October, July, August. But let's say within 3 months of that, you have paperwork that shows you're in good health. You would probably have a lot of times places ask for a bank account just to make sure that you've got something to sustain yourself while you're there, even though it's a provisional passport. Of course, you could come back home wherever home is before you ultimately settle there. But that you have that mobility, because it may not be possible to start a business, or if you're restarting a business, or if you're investing to yield anything back right away. So I would have that kind of a document available. I would somehow show that I'm involved as a volunteer, as I don't know, a donor, as something involved with some Beninese entity. And if there isn't one locally, you're always welcome to work with me and the orphanage that I support, or to get involved with the work that I do with the Imperial Corps Agoje of the African Diaspora, which is a leadership program for women of African descent. In fact, we'll be taking some trips to the continent soon. And start taking classes in Fongbe, or if you know Yoruba, there's not as many Yoruba speakers there, but there are a number of traditional languages. So learn one of those. The most prominent one would be Fongbe, and in French rather. Those are things that I would have in terms of documentation that shows, okay, I can do this, and I can stand on my feet for a little while in the process of moving back to Benin. And let me say one other thing. not everybody is seeking citizenship because they're looking to move back. They're looking to repatriate. Some people just want the passport because they want to say, I am an African. And they want the ability to move back and forth, that is to travel back and forth with a minimum of fuss. Others, there's a provision that says for people born in 1944 are considered automatically African descendants, don't have to prove anything. But these are people in their 80s, people in their 90s, if they're 100 maybe. They may not be able to make it to Benin, but they want that passport. They want to make their transitions, leave this place, leave this plane knowing I am an African. I'm recognized legally as an African. So these are, again, a wide range of reasons why people are seeking citizenship documents, but not everything and not everyone will be, nor should they be moving from, say, here to there.
No. And I also see, and I do want to respect your time. I see another one about will there be a citizenship ceremony? I know Ghana just had a very grand citizenship ceremony, 524, and there have been several iterations. Is there something in the works around, not just, oh, here's your document, go home, but like of course, a reception that, yeah?
Yeah, well, yes, but before that happens, because remember what I said, and I just mentioned this, Benin is asking that you go to Benin, to Cotonou, to drop these documents off. And so the tour that I would be organizing will be the ceremony for dropping those documents off. I have recommended that they do things the other way around. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But as things stand, you have to go to Cotonou to drop things off. And so I will be working with a number of people, with government, even there's some jazz musicians. We're talking about doing something there at the same time to welcome folks who are courageous, loving enough, committed enough to make this move. In terms of a citizenship ceremony, once the papers are in, if that happens 2 months later, I don't know that you'll be able to do that. You know what I mean? You might be able to come back. But my thought is to have a couple of ceremonies every year. And so maybe one big one will take place here because, again, folks might not be able to get back to Benin. So we can have a big ceremony at the embassy. That's one possibility, in addition to having a major ceremony in Benin. It could happen, for instance, during the Voodoo Days ceremony in January, but it could also happen maybe sometime over the summer when people are finished with school and they're on vacation breaks, that sort of thing. So again, stay in touch with me. We'll continue this dialogue and figure out what is best for all of us to do. But know that in October there will be a tour and a ceremony that accompanies it to drop off our paperwork.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so I think at this point we can start to bring things to a close. One thing I want to say on behalf of Repatriate to Ghana, we Abibitumi, Sankofa Journey, that's when we got a chance to go to Benin on the Sankofa Journey. We bring people to Ghana, and then we've gone to Togo and Benin. We definitely love to see how we can cooperate, especially when it comes to documentation, just to make sure that, people are getting a holistic experience about, the land of our great-great-grandsters. If anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. I did read the questions, but people, if anyone has any final questions, then, we can look at those. And if not, then we can move to our libation. with the permission of
Yes.
our Queen Mother.
Yes, let me just say that, again, somebody asked about sub-Saharan Africa. For now, if your DNA shows that you are sub-Saharan African, you were deported, your people were deported through that process, then you can apply. The law, as it's stated, and again, there's a link in the chat box that will take you directly to the Beninese government's, the embassy's website. You click on it, you will download. There's an English version of it. There's also a French version of it, but it tells you what all the stipulations are for citizenship. And then on my YouTube channel, I go through those the chapters and the sections themselves with regard to citizenship. I've also included a couple of email addresses and my website for those who want to stay in touch with me, especially concerning the October tour. If you send me an email, please just write Benin Citizenship in the subject area.
And I see a very good question. What is the cost for the process? Has that been ironed out in terms of a cost for the process?
I told you to be patient. I told you to be patient. There was nothing indicated in terms of a specific cost, but of course there will have to be something for processing this. As soon as I have at least 5 critical, pieces of data, any costs, the application forms themselves, documents that are needed, even the specific date for the tour, I need to make sure I have enough people. It's not that, oh God, we only have 3, I won't go. But it's better to have 30. It's better to have a large number of people who are coming, so I can figure out what accommodations will be needed, that sort of thing. So if we can, I'm going to push the government to get this information to me by let me see. We're in February. Let's say by mid to late April. Maybe that would be another time to touch base again and have a follow-up to this.
Good. And we would definitely love to have you back. As things become more clear, we would definitely love to get more of those questions answered in terms of nuances and so forth. So I think that we'll go ahead and bring things to a close. And we want to thank you first and foremost, Her Royal Majesty, Queen Mother Dr. Dowoti Desir, for availing yourself of your time. I see people who are clapping.
Thank you.
Very, very informative, very inspiring. I know a lot of people are looking forward to, moving to Benin, others investing in Benin, others just having that Benin passport and saying, yeah, I came home, yeah, I got my documentation and everything in between. So on behalf of the Abibitumi family, Repatriate to Ghana, Sankofa Journey, we want to thank you and we want to support you in this initiative as much as possible. We're pulling together a consortium of everybody who's dealing with citizenship. We're not dealing with those borders and whatever. We're coming home in whatever form that may be. So,
yes, and Sister Abina Grace James, thank you. She's in Tanzania. It's like midnight over there. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the people for being here.
Definitely, definitely. All right, I'll go. Thank
you so much. You have my deep gratitude for giving me this platform, and I know on behalf of the Beninese government, this is greatly appreciated, and I know they will just marvel at the sheer number of people. I saw up to 79 people, almost 80 people here at one point. So I give thanks. I give thanks.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a groundswell of support. Everybody's talking about citizenship. Everybody wants to come home. And what you're doing is historic in terms of making that available, making that possible. Nana Marcus Garvey's dreams, so many of our great ancestors' dreams. Everybody who was on a ship, their dream, whether we know their names or not, was to come back home So that's exactly what you're doing, is making that possible. And I can't say enough. It's historic, it's landmark, it's groundbreaking, it's earth shattering. So keep doing what you're doing. And any way that we can support you, we will definitely do that in every way, shape, and form that we can. So Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodie, and I will, as we call the ancestors to come, we will now pour our closing libation. If everybody in the chat can, flood Queen Mother with all of your thankfulness about our making this initiative happen, and I will make it do what it do. I go.
Amen.
I go.
Amen.
I go.
Amen.
Omi tutu, il est tutu, orí tutu, ọ̀nà tutu, lára yé.
Àṣẹ.
Ìbà Olódùmarè tẹ̀ rẹ̀ káyé.
Àṣẹ.
Ìgbàgbà rúmọ̀lá òjùpọ̀ tún.
Àṣẹ.
Ìgbàgbà rúmọ̀lá òjùpọ̀ sí.
Àṣẹ.
Ìgbà rúmọ̀lá bárapetu.
Àṣẹ.
Ìbà Ifá akérèfínú ṣọgbọ́n.
Àṣẹ.
Ìbà àkọ́dá, ìbà àṣẹ̀dá.
Àṣẹ.
Ìbà àbọ̀lókùfẹ̀, ìbà lọ́pọ̀lọ́dẹ rẹ́mọ. Ìbà Ọ̀ní Ifẹ̀. Ìbà Búwa ní ọba. Kábíyèsí. Ìbà Kàngó.
Àṣẹ.
Ìbà Ọya. Ìbà Ògún. Ìbà Ọ̀ṣun. Ìbà Yemọja. Ìbà Ọ̀ṣọ́ọ̀ṣì. Ìbà òrìṣà ńlá.
Àṣẹ.
Ìbà gbogbo ní òrìṣà pátápátá polongodo gbà.
Àṣẹ.
Ìbà ọ̀kànlénírínwó.
Àṣẹ.
A bẹ̀ yín fún gbogbo nǹkan tí a nílò, pàápàá jùlọ kí ẹ ti ayaba Dowoti Desir lẹ́yìn, kí ègbè wọn lẹ́sẹ̀,
Àṣẹ.
kí adé pẹ́ lórí, kí
Àṣẹ.
bàtà pẹ́ lẹ́sẹ̀, kí ìrùkẹ̀rẹ̀ pẹ́ lọ́wọ́.
Àṣẹ.
Igbákejì òrìṣà gbogbo ọ̀dàlà fún wọn nítorí tí ìṣeré ibi tó ń ṣe fún àwọn èèyàn dúdú,
Àṣẹ.
pàápàá jùlọ àwọn èèyàn dúdú tí àwọn òyìnbó kọ̀ wá lẹ́rú, tí a ti lọ sí òkè òkun.
Àṣẹ.
Ní tiẹ̀ a lè padà sílé,
Àṣẹ.
a lè rí gbogbo nǹkan tí a fẹ́ rí,
Àṣẹ.
a lè gbé gbogbo àwọn ìdí wa lọ
Àṣẹ.
padà sí ilẹ̀ adúláwọ̀.
Àṣẹ.
Kí gbogbo nǹkan dára fún kábíyèsí, kí gbogbo nǹkan dára fún àwa alára, kí a lè ní ìlera àti ìdẹ̀ra nígbà tí a padà wálé.
Àṣẹ.
Àṣẹ, àṣẹ, àṣẹ ooo, kí bà kó ṣẹ. Ìbà, ìbà. All right, everyone, thank you as well.
Thank you.
I'm gonna take everyone off of mute or let people unmute themselves. Thank you so much, Queen Mother. If anybody wants to say thank you as well, you can now hop on the mic and say thank you, and we are going to go ahead and close out on that note.
Midwife, thank you, Mother.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
be in
you.
touch soon.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings, everyone.
Thank you.